Okay, hello and welcome to this webinar. I'm Esther Wilkinson. I'm the Academic Liaison Librarian for most of the departments and schools in the Faculty of Humanities. And I'm joined by Gooch, my colleague, who's the Academic Liaison Librarian for Law today. So I will be looking after the Q&A and the chat during the session. So please do feel free to ask any questions you have there. The focus of this webinar will be on finding online resources to add to your reading lists rather than on the mechanics of creating a list on Tallis. But just in case anyone does have any questions about Tallis itself, then Hannah Groom, our reading lists coordinator, will also be joining us towards the end of the session, so you can ask those questions then. As you'll know, it's never been more important for students to be able to access their reading and other module resources online. During the course of this webinar, we're going to be looking at a mixture of different resources which the library subscribes to and which you can access using your Essex login, and also resources which you can use to find open access materials. So that is books and journal articles which are legally free to read online or to download. I'm also going to introduce you to a few tools that you can use to find open access versions of articles where the published version, for example, may be behind a paywall. It will be a bit of a whistle-stop tour, I'm afraid, as we do only have half an hour. And I will try to keep it fairly generic, as there are people here from different departments and schools. However, I do hope that you'll be able to go away afterwards and explore any or all of the resources in more depth for your own subject areas. I'll try to leave some time for questions at the end, but as I say, do also feel free to post questions in the Q&A during the session, and I will either reply directly to you or keep them until the end of the session if that's more appropriate, and we can answer them live. So I thought we'd start by looking at some of the e-resources which the library provides access to. I expect you're familiar already with Library Search, which allows you to search the library's collection of books as well as articles from some of our journal databases. In case you don't already use them, it's worth noting that there are some options on the left-hand side of the search screen which basically allow you to filter your results by format, amongst other things. So in this example, which was a keyword search that I did for the philosopher Nietzsche, I have filtered my results so that they only show the ebooks that the library already has. Equally, you could filter the results just to include full text journal articles. So that can be a really useful way of identifying things that the library already has available online. In addition to library search, you may also want to have a look at some of the subject-specific resources that we subscribe to, as you will often find sources in those that don't appear in your library search results. So if you want to see what resources we provide access to for your discipline or department, then I would recommend having a look at our subject guides, which you can find by clicking on Study and Research Support from the library homepage. So if we just have a look at the subject guides briefly. So I'm going to click on Study and Research Support. And then on the next page, you just need to click on Subject Guides. And then you can scroll down the alphabetical list to find your subject. I'm just going to use the history guide as an example. So if I click on that there, you can see here that the guide is divided into sections according to the type of sources you might want to find for history. So the journal articles page will give you links to the best databases for historical topics. You can see here that popular multidisciplinary resources such as JSTOR, which probably most people are familiar with, are included. But there are also some more subject-specific databases which may give you better results depending on the topics you're searching for. Primary sources are also important for historians. So this subject guide includes links to digitised archives that we subscribe to, and they're arranged by broad topic area, as well as some links to resources which are freely available online. You can find those in the website section there, and that does include some open access primary source archives as well. Now each subject guide will look slightly different depending on what types of resources students and researchers are likely to need access to. So I would recommend exploring the guide for your subject area if you're not already familiar with it, because you may well find resources on there that you perhaps haven't explored before. It is worth being aware that for some departments there are several subject guides. So for example, for lifts there are separate guides for literature, film, theatre studies and journalism. Similarly for law, there are separate guides for law and for human rights. And also for topics that straddle more than one discipline, you may want to explore other subject guides as well as the one for your own department or subject area. If you're using Google Scholar regularly to find material in your subject area, alongside the library databases, then you may be interested to know that it's possible to link it to the library's e-journal holdings so that you can see when we have subscription access to a particular article. And you'll also be prompted for your Essex login details to access it for free when you click on it. So to set that up, you just need to click on the menu icon at the top of the Google Scholar homepage, and then on settings, and then library links. And from the next page you can search for Essex, and just you need to make sure that you tick the boxes next to the University of Essex options. And then you should, if we have subscription access to a particular journal article, when you do a search, you should be able to click straight through to it and enter your University of Essex login credentials. This is particularly useful when you're working from home. When you are on campus, which obviously we're not at the moment, Google Scholar will normally recognise that we have a subscription via the university's IP address. So in addition to the e-books and e-journals that we have, the library does also provide access to audio-visual content online via Box of Broadcasts, which, if you're not familiar with it already, is an archive of TV and radio content dating back to the 1990s. Box of Broadcasts, or Bob as it's commonly known, does also include a large number of feature films. And you have the option of creating clips if you want to, which you can embed into Moodle for your students to access from there. That's particularly useful if you just want to get them to watch or listen to a short section of a programme or a film. If you've used Bob before, you'll probably know that the default search functionality is not great. However, there are search options you can use to refine your search, and those should give you better results. So I'm just going to log into Bob to show you what I mean. You can find it in library search, just search for Bob or Box of Broadcasts, either search should bring it up. And then you can click on the resource URL from the record there, at which point you'll be prompted to log in if you haven't done so already for another resource. Once you're in Bob, you can search by keyword. So for example, if I wanted to find the TV series Wolf Hall, I do my keyword search at the top here. You can see that's actually brought up a large number of results, some of which are episodes of the series I want, some are other materials. So if I wanted to narrow that search a bit, refine it, the reason it's bringing up so many results is Bob is searching for your keywords across the transcripts of all the programs in the database. So if you wanted to exclude those transcripts, you can do using the options. Just clicked on search options underneath the main search box there. Or you can just choose to search for title only. And you can also choose for TV only, radio only, and you can refine your search by date as well if you want to. So if I now do that search again, I only have 8 results, which includes all of the episodes that of that series that I want. So if I click on one of those, you can see that you can access the full transcript for that episode there. And if you want to, from this screen, you can also make a clip. So that's the clip that you can then embed into Moodle for your students to watch. Just makes it it just makes it a bit easier for them to actually access that resource and the particular part of it that you want them to see. So that was Bob. Another online resource that the university provides access to is LinkedIn Learning, which you may already be familiar with. It's a collection of video courses on a wide range of topics. There's not a huge amount of content for the humanities generally, but it does include topics such as filmmaking and also events planning and management, which may be helpful for LIFTs and EDGE students respectively. So again, you have to go via the university's LinkedIn Learning page. You sign in again using your University of Essex credentials, which I've entered already. You can search there for videos on particular topics. So if I just look for filmmaking, then there are various different courses there, and they tell you how long each one is. Some of them are quite extensive. So they're just extra resources that you might want to direct your students to in particular areas. Okay, so that's kind of some of the library subscription resources that are available to you. I'd like to move on now just to look at some of the open access resources that you might be able to use as well. There are 2 questions that we are often asked about open access resources. Firstly, are the materials appropriate for academic work? And can they be used legally for teaching and research? The answer to both of these questions is yes. It is important to distinguish between open access and predatory publishers, obviously, but most legitimate open access publications do undergo the same rigorous peer review process as those which are behind paywalls. And the content is licensed for educational use in the same way, as long as you obviously acknowledge the source as you would do normally. One of the advantages of using open access material in your reading lists, particularly if you're teaching first year or MA modules, is that students can access it before they arrive at the university, and obviously also after they leave. So they don't need to have received their Essex login credentials if they want to get ahead with reading for their modules. So that's something just to bear in mind. We're now going to take a look at some of the reputable open access sources you could use to find material for your reading lists. As I say, it will be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. There are a number of websites which allow you to find high quality open access journal articles and also content from digital repositories of universities around the world. These are some of the main ones which cover most subject areas. Just like to take a very brief look at a couple of them. So if we have a look at the first one, Directory of Open Access Journals, or DOAJ first. Click through to that. You can search DOAJ by keyword, or you can browse by subject area. So if I, for example, do a search for immigration law, which I did earlier, so it's come up automatically. You can see from the results screen that you can click through to the full text of any of these articles, and you can use various filters on the side to refine your search if you want to. As I say, you can also browse by subject area using the pull down menus from the folders there too. So it's something you might want to explore a bit in your own time. Another one that I particularly like is the Digital Commons Network. Has quite a nice interface. Again, you can search this by keyword, or you can browse by topic area, but the browsing is done from this kind of spiral here. And if you hover over any of these areas, you can kind of see the subject areas labelled there. So if I click on Explore Arts and Humanities, you can then refine that topic further. So you can again select from any of the options here. So you've got things like creative writing, music, art and design, philosophy, etc. I'm going to explore feminist, gender and sexuality studies. And then again, you can further refine that topic area if you want to. So you've got LGBT, you've got women's studies, and other. So we're going to have a look at women's studies for now. Again, you get a list of the popular articles at the top, and then a full list of all of the articles in that topic area. Below that, there are quite a few of these, so you may want to refine further. You can do that using the options at the side there on the left hand side, other refinements. And then you have options to refine by date, publication, keywords, institutions, a whole range of different options there. So again, something you might want to explore in your own time, and I find this one particularly kind of neat and easy to use. Open Door and Core are other sites you might want to have a look at. Apologies, we can't look at them all in the webinar today for time reasons. There is a counterpart to DOAJ, that Directory of Open Access Journals, which allows you to search specifically for books. It's not very originally titled Directory of Open Access Books. It works in very much the same way, so you can search by keyword or browse by subject as you would do for the journals. Another way of finding content specifically in your subject area is to look at what open access content is available from publishers that you may use regularly in your discipline. So these are some of the publishers that cover most humanities subjects. You're probably aware of others that have a narrower focus, and so may also be worth looking at for your individual disciplines. This page on the library website provides links, direct links to some of the major publishers and their open access collections. So you might want to have a look at some of those. You may recognise some of the publishers already. If you want to find out about the status of open access in your discipline, or indeed get some tips on open access publishers or journals to look out for, I would recommend this German website. If we just have a very quick look at that. Gives you a list of different subjects, disciplines. I believe this is being added to on a regular basis. So if we just have a look at philosophy as an example. This tells you a little bit about the spread and the acceptance of open access in the discipline of philosophy. And then if we scroll down a little bit further, it highlights some useful open access resources. So there's a mixture there of journals, books, and also online repositories specific to that discipline. So this can be quite a good place to start as well when you're kind of looking for open access resources in your subject area. Again, worth looking at in your own time. Before we finish, I just wanted to mention a few tools as well that can be useful if you're trying to find open access versions of content which is behind a paywall. So that might be things that you find in the library's non-full text databases or via Google Scholar that we don't subscribe to. As you're probably aware, preprint versions of journal articles in particular are often archived in repositories, and the content of these preprint versions will usually be the same as the published versions, or very similar, but just without the typesetting that's done by the journal publishers. So Copernio, Unpaywall, Core Discovery, and also Open Access Button are basically browser plugins which you can download for free. And when you come across an article that's behind a paywall, they will search for a licensed open access version. Open Access Button, which does actually include data from both Unpaywall and Core, will also contact authors directly if no open access version is available. And encourage them to add a legal copy to a repository so that you and other researchers and students obviously can get access for free. So again, worth perhaps exploring one or two of those in your own time, perhaps downloading one of them and seeing how you get on with it. Okay, we're coming to the end of the webinar. I'm conscious of time. Information on open access, so further information, and also reading lists more generally is available from the library website. The links are on the slides here, and I'm happy to distribute the slides after this session. If you have any questions after this webinar, then you can contact us directly by email. If it relates to sort of general reading list queries, then it's best to contact the reading list team. For more subject specific help or advice on open access, then you can contact either me if you're from Edge, History, Lifts or SPA, or I if you're from the law school, and we will be very happy to try and help you with any queries that you have. If you don't have to rush off immediately, then we're also happy to take any questions now. I don't know whether there's anything in the chat or the Q&A that you haven't answered. I can't actually see it at the moment.
No, nothing at the moment.
Okay. Well, we're happy to hang around for a few minutes in case anyone does want to ask anything. But if you do have to rush off, then thank you for attending, and do please get in touch if you have any queries at any point.
There's one question.
Oh, okay. Kathy Crawford says, please will you send me your slides? Yes, I will distribute the slides after the session to everyone who's attended, so no problem.
And Sheldon, you want to talk?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, because my computer wasn't working earlier on. Will there be a recording of this event?
Yes, we are recording this session, so it will be available on the open access and also the reading lists pages of the library website. So those are the ones on the last slide. And also I'll email out the slides and I'll include the link to the recording as well at that point.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I think that's, we